This is a story about a little girl who loved to sing. She lived in a big house with tall walls around it that kept her safe inside. But one day she got so bored that she decided to go outside for an adventure. While exploring, she came across a little wooden door hidden by some bushes. The door led down a path to a beautiful field full of tall grass and sparkling flowers. And at the end of the field was a deep, dark forest. The girl wanted to explore the forest, but when she walked inside, she realized she was being watched by glowing eyes that peeked at her from behind the trees. She started to get scared and run home. Suddenly, she tripped over a tree root and fell. She tried to get back up, but the more she struggled, the deeper she sank into the ground. Before she knew it, she was trapped inside a hole. The girl cried out for help, but no one could hear her because the forest was very good at swallowing sounds. Then she remembered her mom always told her to make up a song whenever she felt scared. So the girl started to sing. At first, the sound of her voice was swallowed by the forest, but then something amazing happened. Her song began to break the tree roots holding her down and free her from the hole. And as the last note rang through the forest, she was back on her feet. When the girl looked around, she saw a tiny wooden house with a roof made of leaves. Next to it was a small table and a chair, and sitting on the table was a shiny golden ladle. It was warm and inviting, and as soon as she touched it, she heard a voice inside saying, "Whoever holds this ladle will have their lullabies brought to life." Curious, the girl brought the ladle home without telling anyone. Later that night, while everyone was sleeping, the girl went into the kitchen and filled a pot with water. She put the pot on the stove, turned on the flame, and sang a soft lullaby as she stirred with the ladle. As the song filled the room, the water in the pot began to move in time with the melody. At first it swirled slowly, but then faster and faster, until it created a vortex that sucked everything into it, including the stove, the pot, and the girl. She woke up on the floor next to the empty pot and the ladle. She was so scared and started crying. Then suddenly she heard a knock at the door. She opened it, and there stood a friendly-looking old woman. "What happened?" asked the woman. "I don't know," replied the girl, pointing at the ladle. "I just found this, and then when I sang, this happened." The woman took the ladle, smiled, and said, "Oh, this is a very special tool. It stirs forgotten lullabies into the air, but it also has a darker side. If a greedy fog monster accidentally drinks the lullaby, they will grow bigger and stronger with each song." She handed the ladle back to the girl and explained, "You have to be very careful with this. If a fog monster drinks your lullaby, you only have until midnight to make them sleep again, or else they'll swallow the whole town." Then the woman disappeared as quickly as she had come. The girl was very scared, but she didn't want to let the monster win. So she hid the ladle under her pillow and tried to fall asleep, but she couldn't stop thinking about what would happen if the monster drank her song. Suddenly she heard a knock at the window. She opened it and gasped. In front of her stood a thick white cloud with two glowing red eyes peering out from behind the fog. "Hello," said the girl. "Can I help you?" "I smell delicious food," said the fog monster. "What are you cooking?" "I'm not cooking anything," replied the girl. But the monster could already see the steam coming from under her door, and it wanted to investigate further. "Let me in, and I'll give you a piece of my delicious stew," said the girl. "Deal," said the monster, and it slithered under the door. As soon as it entered the room, its eyes grew wide with hunger. It lunged towards the pot and slurped up the remaining soup in one gulp. "Delicious!" It burped and wiped its mouth with a cloud. "That was the best food I've ever tasted. Now I'm going to take a nap." And it snuggled up in the corner, but instead of falling asleep, it grew bigger and bigger, taking the shape of an enormous white dragon. It flapped its wings, which were made of clouds, and roared so loudly that the windows shattered. "Now I'm going to eat all of the delicious food in this town," it said, and it flew off into the night. The girl was terrified, but she remembered what the old woman had told her. She grabbed the ladle and ran after the fog monster. "Stop, please," she called out. "Eat this instead." The monster stopped and looked back at her. "What do you want?" it growled. "I want you to drink this lullaby and fall asleep again," said the girl. She stirred the ladle through the air, and a new melody filled the sky. The monster opened its mouth and drank it in. But instead of calming it down, the song made it even angrier. It let out a deafening roar and flew away again. The girl sighed, She needed a new plan and fast. She looked around for inspiration and saw a jar of Starlight honey on the table. She hadn't seen this before, but it looked beautiful and smelled sweet. The girl scooped some of the honey into a bowl and stirred it with the ladle. As she did, a magical tune filled the air and the stars twinkled in time with the melody. This was it. This was the song she needed. She flew after the monster and called out, "Hey, stop for a moment. I have something better than food here." The monster slowed down and turned to face her. "What do you want?" it asked suspiciously. "Drink this honey and you'll feel better," said the girl. The monster hesitated for a moment, then opened its mouth and lapped up the honey in one gulp. Ah, that was delicious! It burped and rubbed its belly. It closed its eyes and snuggled up in a cloud. "I feel so sleepy now. Thank you, little girl." And with that, the fog monster drifted off to sleep. The girl watched as the monster slumbered peacefully in the sky. She smiled, relieved that she had saved the town. Then she noticed something strange. The monster's snoring sounded like music, and as she listened closely, she realized it was actually singing the same song she had just played for it. The girl joined in, and together they sang until the sun began to rise. As the first rays of light touched the monster, it vanished into thin air, leaving behind a faint smell of honeysuckle. The girl continued singing until the entire town awoke to the sound of her beautiful melody. Everyone came outside to see what was happening and cheered when they realized the fog had lifted. From that day on, the girl wore a chef's apron with musical notes all over it. She also got a pair of fuzzy slippers that made her feel brave and confident whenever she needed to solve a problem with a song. And that's exactly what happened when a few weeks later, a grumpy troll tried to block the river with rocks, threatening to flood the town. But that's a story for another time.